Passion is an emotion fueled by pure desire derived from the feelings of the heart, an emotion that brings us satisfaction and even fulfillment through our sense of purpose. Desire gives birth to purpose. It becomes our sole reason to reach and do the things we wish to carry out in this world. Purpose is then united by the feelings of passion, a strong feeling of need and want to set out and achieve your inner eagerness or your deep-rooted desired goal coming to fruition. Passion then forms happiness and joy from engaging in the process of carrying out the love of your goals birthed from desires of your purpose. Completing this cycle brings satisfaction. Satisfaction from this process is then delivered into the engraving of the heart, a feeling only able to be understood to those with a strong desire of inner passion themselves. When purpose becomes overshadowed by the same feelings of satisfaction, it becomes self-gratification, a feeling motivated based on a single goal of alleviating your own ego. It's like saying, I'm only doing this to feel better about myself, to change what I couldn't, and to fit the status quo of the things I preach. The emotions I experience are more important than my own passionate heart, and what fuels me is the end result of achieving something just to satisfy my own existence. But on the other hand, what happens when said feelings of purpose overrides the feeling of satisfaction? The end result then creates the feeling of obligation, a feeling of acting upon a sense of duty, driven by the responsibility of what only you can do, a feeling of satisfaction and joy being overtaken by a sense of need, doing things just because I have to, or it's my job, I have no choice. 2004's Kamen Rider Blade tackles the many sides between the powerful feelings of passion and obligation in a very interesting manner that I believe no other rider show has done before. Even though it is in my honest opinion that Kenzaki, the main protagonist, is one of the more least interesting characters in the show, I do think there's something not talked about enough with the way his character arc revolves around the themes of passion. And, editor's note, spoilers if you haven't seen Blade yet, I strongly advise watching the show first before hearing what I'm about to say. And, I'm just going to mention this right now because I feel like I have to talk about it if I'm trying to get you guys to watch the show. Blade's earlier episodes, I'm going to be honest, the first 10 episodes to be exact, is a mess. The setting really doesn't tell us about the characters and kind of just expects you to roll with it, to put together each individual character's role in a story. And this weird style of pacing kind of comes at the cost of making Kenzaki feel like an important piece of an overall larger narrative. Alright, enough of that for now. If I wanted to make this video about talking about Blade's flaws, I would. But today, this is a different topic. And getting into the main point, it's apparent Kenzaki's trauma is what ultimately drives and gives birth to his desire to protect humanity. It becomes his sole purpose to enroll in board's ranks to become a rider. Whenever he's able to save lives, a sense of satisfaction is etched into his heart, an emotion sparked by his self-imposed goal. Even though this passion is Kenzaki's best attribute, the show kinda hints that even someone like him may be capable of letting the feeling of satisfaction override his own passion, diverging into the feelings of self-gratification, which I will get into more detail as the video progresses. But right now I want to focus primarily about how Kenzaki's passion was masked. You guys like what I did there? Now, the way the show presents this narrative is a little weird, not gonna lie, because at first, being a Kamen Rider is treated as a job he must carry out, and sealing the undead is a responsibility he carries. Okay, that's relatively straightforward. I mean, a bunch of ancient monsters are roaming around in Japan, so of course, a huge amount of responsibility is put on the shoulders of the riders to deal with them. But the way the show unravels this narrative/topic is honestly kind of weird. At first, it would seem that Kenzaki's motivation of a sense of duty is correct, and his way of thinking is fine. A job that only he can do rests upon his shoulders, and if he falters, then people will pay the price for it. But in a way, it is framed like maybe Kenzaki feels obligated to save the lives of others because it's simply just his job. And to be honest, that doesn't seem like what a Kamen Rider would do. But is this really the case with Kenzaki? Now, what I'm gonna say is crazy, but the navy-colored rider in question shouldn't really be fighting the undead because of a sense of obligated responsibility, but rather because he wants to. The show actually wants us to believe Kenzaki is motivated by this job he has to carry out, as if this is the right thing to do, when in actuality, it was actually never this simple. When he himself goes the extra mile to make it clear, his own actions are purely motivated by something else entirely. There's one particular example to this statement, and that is Hajime. In one of the earlier episodes, after Hajime is knocked out in battle, shockingly, Kenzaki takes it upon himself to nurse his new friend back to health. Keep in mind, Kenzaki was never once asked or even was obligated to save what many can consider a potential enemy. His actions here were out of a want and need to simply see another living being, someone just like him, be protected from the tragedies of the events happening around him. It is also heavily implied by the show that after Kenzaki lost his parents, our kind-hearted MC grew up lonely and eventually became used to the feelings of solitude. Perhaps this trauma and innate loneliness as a child would explain his interaction with Hajime. Ultimately, Kenzaki's kindness would soon overstep the boundaries of obligation, giving birth to a newer purpose.
Fusion Jack.
The Jack Form debut episode is when the show flips around Kenzaki's pre-established character arc and instead re-characterizes what it truly means to be a hero, a true Kamen Rider. We are soon met with the arrival of Shima-san, an essential character that exists to question the fruits of labor of Kenzaki's actions thus far. Once again, the way the show takes it upon themselves to recontextualize Kenzaki as a MC is honestly so weird. I can't say it enough how this arc just kind of comes out of nowhere, but at the same time, it just strangely works in the overall narrative of the later episodes. You know, it might just be me, but either what this arc was setting up is either unintentionally a masterclass in writing, or just pure luck that everything went as smoothly as it did for Blade's story during the mid-30s. Kenzaki's motivation for fighting and protecting others is now put to the ringer. What fuels your drive? You go to protect. Is it a feeling of obligation that fuels your actions? A feeling of duty to be obligated to save lives because it's what you were made out to do? Or is there something else deep within your heart that compels your choices? A hidden flame held deep within your heart, waiting to ignite into something more powerful? Until Kenzaki can answer these questions, this dilemma, he can't grow stronger and become the true rider hero he's always meant to be. The point of the Jack Farm episodes was to open Kenzaki's eyes to his truest feelings. And well, maybe to sell toys, of course, but the truth is, the source of Blade's strength was always his ignited spirit for the love of life that truly powered his fighting spirit. To put it simply, Kenzaki has always loved humanity. It was just that his way of thinking that being a rider was more like a job really clouded his truest feelings and self. Upon realizing his true drive, a new transformation happens as his hidden passion overwhelms his body like a raging fire set ablaze. A feeling of passion stronger than a sense of duty, greater than a weight of responsibility, surpassing the limits of his mortal shell. Now, a true Kamen Rider is upon us.
こいつは人類を滅ぼしたりはしない。別の解決法があるはずです。そんなものはない。どけ。もしないなら、その時は俺が封印します。
Ever since the debut of Jack Form, as mentioned earlier, Kenzaki's passion would prove to be ultimately his greatest asset. Even if the later episodes still refer to his motive as a job, what changed is the main principle of what influences his willpower to fight. He is no longer influenced through obligation, but rather through the love and passion burning within his heart. His fight against Tachibana was also a testament of how far he was willing to go up and beyond for his desired self-imposed goal of believing in Hajime to the end. Unlike Tachibana, who didn't have the same mentality as his junior, Kenzaki's desire to protect made him stronger than ever. I should also talk a bit about Kenzaki's character song. An emphasis on the desire to be strong and staying true to his feelings is something that really sums up the character and characterizes really well the depth of Kenzaki's traits. His innate kindness, I think, is honestly very commendable and is quite possibly the strongest tool in his arsenal. And why, you may ask? Because this trait is what moves those around him to change and do better. Like I said before, said trait is what allowed his closest allies, Hirose and Kotaro, to be motivated and remain strong even when times get tough, and especially Kotaro, who has changed the most due to Kenzaki's influence, who shows a great amount of growth. And honestly, it's all from the radiating influence of Kenzaki that allowed Kotaro to change his viewpoint of Hajime around. Now, surprisingly, Kenzaki's character development does not stop the moment Jack Form debuts. Instead, he undergoes more trials, pun intended, about what it means to be a true hero. More importantly, what it means to be a Kamen Rider. I'm going to have to mention it now, but the term Kamen Rider has changed a lot depending on the era and show. So, for the sake of simplicity, I'll just focus on Blade's take on what it means to be the Masked Warrior. Episode 33 and 34 presents a moment in Kenzaki's small doubts of his decision to trust in not only Hajime's words, but also his own abilities as Kamen Rider Blade. After losing to her category king, Kenzaki wonders if the small amounts of doubts in his heart were truly justified at that moment. What if his feelings in trusting Hajime were nothing more than just an uneducated guess, an unknown variable without any amount of evidence to whether or not his trust will amount to anything of good? Even if some of these thoughts were quickly shaking off, things get worse when Kenzaki finds himself failing and losing miserably in the face of a new formidable foe. Failing not once, but twice in a day's notice. First, failing Hajime in recovering his cards, and second, being forced in a corner, unable to protect his friends. Kenzaki soon falters and wonders to himself if Blade really is the hero he swore to be. Finding fault in everything that has occurred in his mind, Kenzaki believes the best course of action is to carry out his mission alone. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that it is heavily implied Kenzaki is used to being in solitude. Therefore, this choice he decides to carry out here makes sense. But rather, it is also used to reframe this trait into a personality flaw. Because of Kenzaki's upbringing, he decides to bear this weight of finding the undead alone. Until the sudden realization hits. Kenzaki was never truly alone up to this point. Hirose, being moved by his actions over the many experiences they shared together, takes it upon herself to remind Kenzaki what being a Kamen Rider means. A rider is a protector who must never run from adversity. A protector who fights for those who cannot. Hearing these words of inspiration, the Navy Rider regains his sense of self-worth. Now, within the next couple of episodes, the meaning of Kamen Rider is soon then recontextualized once more in Blade's take. Kenzaki finds himself in a rematch with King, this time without the lingering doubts that once plagued his mind, but rather with each of his fists resonating with the weight of carrying out his inner eagerness to defend human life. And as such, his next evolution as a Kamen Rider bestows him the power of King form. Okay, this is gonna go off script, but the following episodes would then expand more on the notion of a recontextualized Kamen Rider. And I'm gonna be honest, but episode 35 and 36 with Kenzaki's B-plot feels like a filler. Kinda? I don't know how to explain it. Like I said, some of the story beats are uncanny, but in a good way. What I mean is how the story somewhat takes a break from Hajime's struggles of suppressing his undead instincts to rather instead focus on a different side story, you know? It's weird. Anyways, I know that these two episodes aren't everyone's cup of tea with how it deviates from the importance of other essential things going on, but even if this episode feels fillerish, I promise it is actually important to the overarching narrative of what I'm talking about so far. After overexerting his strength with a royal straight flush, Kenzaki finds himself collapsing due to exhaustion. He is then picked up by Umi, a girl who desires to have her own personal hero. At first glance, many have deemed her behavior petty and selfish from keeping Kenzaki from focusing on the bigger picture, trapping our MC in doing random absurd errands and all that. You know, despite her seemingly annoying exterior, the young girl holds a traumatic interior. Similar to Kenzaki, both of their parents were lost in an event neither of them could change themselves. Those who wet tears of feeling powerlessness engage in different ways of dealing with said emotions. While Kenzaki was able to figuratively morph his pain and guilt into passion, Umi instead remains pessimistic and wallows in her own problems. And who can blame her? No one came to her rescue when she needed a savior to save her family in time of need. These repressed feelings of frustrations and trauma creates her pessimism and despair over the ideals of a superhero. Such thoughts then begin to run rampant. Heroes aren't real, they're all fake. No one will ever come to save me, it's all just a sham. In spite of these lingering doubts and thoughts of anguish, Kenzaki still decides to fight for her. Feeling these tense emotions of hopelessness, Kenzaki decides to explain to Umi, and by extension the viewers, why he does the things he does. It is true that Kenzaki was never able to save his family, and from what we saw, there was no savior to come to his rescue. That's why, ever since that fateful day, Kenzaki vowed himself to be that hero, to be the person that fights to protect. If no one can be this hero, then he himself will bear arms and carry out the path of sorrow and sacrifice.
たとえ今は君一人守るのがやっとでも諦めない。運命に負けたくないんだ。
Kenzaki.
It is a vow forged in fire and yet hardened like a steel sword. This is the answer to Umi's cries, an answer fully unraveled by the selfless actions of Kenzaki's heart. Earlier in the video, I mentioned how satisfaction can override the feelings of both passion and obligation. But right here, this particular event right here already tells us how indomitable Kenzaki's spirit is. Someone like him won't delve into the idea of a warrior fighting for self-satisfaction, fighting for self-gratification, just to make himself feel better over the things he couldn't change himself. If anything, Kenzaki didn't need to be by Umi's side the whole day, and he could have just left to focus on his own list of problems. But instead, he decided to stay and try to save a human being rooted in arms of despair. And let me tell you, nobody likes being shot 5 different times. Yes, I counted 5 times. Just for the sake of self-gratification, of saving or helping someone else. Getting back to the main point, Kenzaki's will and unwavering fortitude shines through and ultimately even influences Umi's new outlook in life. The main takeaway that I want to focus from this episode also emphasizes how there's always heroic traits hidden within all of us, just waiting to be exposed to the world. Maybe in a way, Umi was never too pessimistic about her demoralizing ideals. After all, the show did hint she was already instilled with a heroic heart, even if she didn't know it at first. It's important to remember that she did save Kenzaki technically twice. First, from carrying him back to her hideout so he can rest, and secondly, to the hospital after the battle with one of the trial series. I guess you can say she's similar like Kenzaki in a way. A hero who does what others cannot, and does whatever it takes to save someone. The story concludes with Umi being affected by Kenzaki's kindness, and once again believing in a new tomorrow. And maybe who knows, maybe one day she'll try to become a selfless hero like the one that saved her today. The ultimate sacrifice against fate. To recap one more time, Kenzaki's journey as both a hero and a Kamen Rider is mainly influenced through his selfless heart and incredible passion. His heart is ultimately his ultimate trump card, a device of instrumentality that has affected others to do better and be greater. If trusting his heart is naive, then he'll be damned for the path he chooses. I think Hajime said it best in one of the earlier episodes. What truly strong is human emotion. It is these very emotions that truly make us the best version of ourselves. What truly is powerful was never our fists or the fingers that hold our weapons. It was always our emotions that made these objects as strong as they are. The dilemma with Hajime's fate presents an interesting question to both the viewers and our MC. How far are you willing to go for your selfless passion? To what lengths and sacrifices are you willing to make in order to achieve the impossible? And to answer that question, the viewers are met with a tragic ultimatum, an action caused by an unfathomable level of tenderness and affection. Every trial, no pun intended this time, that Kenzaki has endured and overcame resulted in the most tragic final decision it may be of all of Kamen Rider. Seeing the melancholic state his friend is instilled in, Kenzaki makes it his choice to free Hajime from the chains of fate, a choice influenced clearly by Kenzaki's passion and his heart for the love of humanity. Because of his love, Kenzaki is able to make the harsh decision, giving up his own humanity so that his friend can have his chance at being human. Despite, Hajime being of undead origin, Kenzaki, he saw past all of this, for all our hero could see was an undead with a caring human heart. To feel and love is a human necessity. These feelings are something that Kenzaki cannot deny from Hajime's own existence. And that's why Kenzaki, he couldn't seal away Hajime, even if it might be the right thing to do. Because if he were to do that, that's almost the same as denying Hajime's feelings, his love for others, and of course, his own future. And Kenzaki, he's not someone like that. He knows firsthand what's it like to have someone you love, someone you hold dearly to, be taken away from them. It's ironic. The Joker is a wild card and represents destruction. But now, it's quite the opposite. Hajime has a heart filled with warmth and fondness for the people he has stood by for all this time. An undead with a human heart. Realizing this, Kenzaki decides he can't rip these feelings away from someone just like him. His heart and feelings would never allow him to do that. And even if he did, he won't be able to forgive himself for sacrificing one life for the good of others. Staying true to the protector he swore to be, Kenzaki makes a choice surpassing the boundaries of both obligation and passion, a selfless sacrifice of giving up his own happiness so that everything he loves and held so dearly to his heart can live on for the future, even if he loses his. And as so, the hero makes the ultimate choice. But this ultimatum is also tragically a gift from the depths of Kenzaki's heart, for it is his passion that is now gifted to Hajime. While Hajime gains the profound love of humanity, Kenzaki tragically loses his. What's amazing with this ending is that all of this was already implied or hinted before the final episode even aired. But even so, none of us would ever imagine the sacrifice would hit this hard. I won't go into extreme detail, but the second opening elements I've already illustrated the sorrowful ending that we will soon be met with. Kenzaki himself already had a high fusion rate, and this attribute made it a risk from turning into an undead with every passing battle. With every fight he engages in for the sake of protecting humanity, he sadly loses his. Even Elements gives us more clues about Kenzaki's choice to trust his heart. The final trump card myself refers to his own personal strengths, derived from the passionate fire that resides in his own flesh and blood. It is ultimately this power that acted as his destined trump card. Perhaps in a depressing way, Kenzaki's fate was always meant to happen like this, which again adds more of a narrative presence to the quote about his endless fight with fate itself. If it is fate that he gives up his own happiness for others, then so be it. No matter how many days, months, years, no matter how much it takes, this battle is forever eternal. A battle without a beginning and without an end. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts on a limitless passion of Kenzaki Kazuma in this video essay. You know, in a show with strong contenders like Hajime and Tachibana, I feel like Kenzaki was easily the most boring character out of everyone. I know, it's a hot take. Luckily, the episodes I covered were able to change and shift my opinions around when I was rewatching Blade for a second time back in 2021. Once again, if you guys made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to discuss my thoughts on what I think is Kamen Rider's most unique takes on being a hero. I should also mention this before I end my video, but I left out Kenzaki's reappearance from Decade and other crossover specials on purpose in order to not convolute the video's themes. Maybe those aforementioned specials and whatnot can be a video in itself. But until next time guys.